Recap of Will Trent Season 4 Episode 4, A Messy Investigation Reveals Complex Emotions. The death of Catalina, a dancer, opens this week's Will Trent episode. Catalina unexpectedly passes out in the middle of the dance floor while attending a nightclub afterparty with a group of dancers she frequently competes with. Amanda, Sonja Sohn, and Pete, Curtiu, assist Will, Ramón Rodriguéz, and Faith, Iantha Richardson, as they investigate the crime throughout the episode. Will feels insecure about his lack of connection to the language and his Puerto Rican ethnicity while spending time researching a group of mostly Spanish-speaking attendees. The Man from Nowhere, in Season 4, Episode 4 makes a strong case with a poignant turn, and the subplot is equally gripping. The episode's central theme, however, is how it examines Will's strong need to fit in and how his upbringing deprived him of his connection to his roots. Will is mourning not only the childhood he never experienced but also the ties to his culture and community that he would have had if his mother, Raiany Silva, hadn't been murdered. It serves as yet another reminder of what Ulster, Germann, stole from Will and gives the otherwise case-heavy episode a strong character-centric foundation. Will and Faith look into a dancer's poisoning in Will Trent Season 4, Episode 4. After Will and Faith discover that Catalina has been poisoned, the GBI detains everyone at the club while they investigate. When interrogating witnesses and possible suspects, Will finds it difficult to communicate in Spanish, which makes him feel inadequate. They discover that Roxy, Itziar Martinez, Catalina's competitor, formerly danced with Javi, her dancing partner. Bon Bon Chiffon, Johnny Beecham, also makes a comeback in this episode, complimenting Will for discreetly changing his style and amusingly telling Will and Faith about the drama among the dancers. When they discover that Catalina's makeup was poisoned, Roxy becomes their top suspect. Will and Faith are certain that Javi is being paid to fill in for someone when he confesses. Will informs his therapist, Dr. Roach, Margaret Cho, during a session that the case is making him feel insecure and that he doesn't belong because he doesn't speak Spanish well and didn't begin to connect with his background until 2 years ago. Will returns to the case with fresh confidence when she confirms his identity and all of his worries. When Will and Faith discover that Catalina regularly stole Roxy's clothing and makeup, they come to the conclusion that Roxy was the target of the poisoning. Will discovers Ramos Delgado, Juan Javier Cardenas, a diplomat who frequently visits the club with his wife Isabella, Carolina Gomez, as a result of the research. When Ramos learnt that Isabella was going to leave him for Roxy because they were in love, he attempted to murder her. Will and Faith can clearly see that Ramos killed Catalina, but they lack sufficient evidence to revoke his diplomatic immunity. Will later confronts Ramos at the nightclub, even bringing up the fact that Catalina's death was caused by the same poison that was used on Ramos' political opponents 6 years prior. They are able to accuse Will and revoke his diplomatic immunity by tricking him into making a confession while Faith is surreptitiously listening in. Relieved to be together at last, Roxy and Isabella thank Will as Ramos is taken into custody. After that, Will returns home and uses some of the techniques he picked up from Roxy earlier in the day to dance with Betty, Bluebell. In Will Trent Season 4, Episode 4, Angie and Ormawood reopen a cold case. Ormawood, Jake McLaughlin, and Angie, Erica Christensen, are dismayed to discover that they must collaborate with a few criminology students in order to assist a professor. Angie and Ormawood are drawn to a cold case by the two students. Beverly Routledge was murdered in 2003. Because Tony, Beverly's neighbor, lived in a halfway house and had served time in jail, she was rejected as the only legitimate possible witness. The four college students look for evidence after receiving a potential lead on a car that Tony claimed was pursuing her the night Beverly was killed. They eventually find the license plate of Wayne Hensley, a man who was involved in a nearby crime at the same time. Although Wayne's DNA matches 3 previous cases of sexual assault, he is not the person who killed Beverly. When Angie speaks with Tony, she learns that a man by the name of Jim Branson was in charge of the halfway home. Jim had been operating a sex trafficking operation out of the halfway house, and he threatened to evict the residents if they didn't comply. The week before she was killed, Tony had visited Beverly, who intended to talk to Jim before calling the police. Although there is currently no evidence linking Jim to Beverly's murder scene, this is rather solid proof that he killed her. Without an interpreter, it was difficult to interview the witnesses, but Will was determined to try using his poor Spanish, which just made him feel more alienated. I adored Will Trent's emphasis on how Will has always felt unique and what could be able to alleviate his inferiority problem. In order to counterbalance that, Angie and Ormelwood investigated a 20-year-old cold case and taught 2 college interns about how instances differed from expectations. Important self-realizations were present in The Man from Nowhere, although certain aspects seemed lacking. Bon Bon's comeback and gorgeous choreography added to the lead case. Will Trent's dance scenes are always entertaining. The show showcases skilled choreographers who have contributed to the salsa dance landscape. I couldn't move like that, so I was in awe of those dancers. Catalina's fall and Will's position next to her appeared to have been staged. Because it happened so quickly, it seemed to be a fast-acting poison. Will wanted to interview everyone as soon as possible, but it was clear that even Faith struggled with her partner and the restless natives. The arrival of Bon Bon Chiffon, who nearly worshipped Catalina and was aware of all the rumors, only made things go more smoothly. Everyone needs a friend like Bon Bon, who can spot our new outfit, tell us who wears what makeup, and share the most recent rumors. Even while Will doesn't typically do that, it undoubtedly helped him identify some suspects and restored Bon Bon's sense of usefulness on a case. I was sad that Faith didn't have the opportunity to dance with Iantha Richardson's dancing experience, even though we watched Will dance later in the show. A seductive salsa opens up new opportunities. Before Will interviewed Catalina, I believed that she was the primary target and that S4XE4 killed her out of jealousy. She persisted on dancing during the interview, and Will looked pretty enamored with her. It was difficult to avoid getting sidetracked by her. She appeared helpful until Will inquired about Javi, at which point she said she could get by without him. Will was also worried about Roxy's bruises, particularly when Catalina's chamber revealed that her body paint contained poison. Will had to think about the possibility that someone truly intended to kill Roxy if he accepted her claim that she hadn't planted it. I wondered whether Roxy had an affair with another dancer when she said he wouldn't comprehend that world, but I never suspected it was with Isabella. Because of the hummingbird and flower tattoo, which represented 2 lovers making their way back to one another, Will was the only one who noticed that mess. I questioned if Isabella's fear of her husband stemmed from the affair or from the fact that she was leaving him for another woman. I was thrilled when Will got past Roxy, who appeared to like him. If he goes to Puerto Rico, perhaps we'll see them again. I adored how Will Trent's heritage and tenacity were revisited in Season 4 Episode 4. Will Trent hasn't talked about his feelings of insecurity about being Puerto Rican and not fitting in a very long time. I was impressed by Will's refusal to let the absence of an interpreter deter him, but Ramos believed he had the advantage because of his poor command of Spanish. Will has benefited greatly from therapy. He's finally able to acknowledge that understanding his origins has given him peace of mind, something he was never able to do before. Knowing that he had ancestry and a piece of Puerto Rico, where he could always go back, was comforting. We're hoping to visit Uncle Antonio again soon because of this discussion about Puerto Rico and the necessity for family. A number of other guest stars have returned thanks to Will Trent. Knowing that he had ancestry and a piece of Puerto Rico, where he could always go back, was comforting. We're hoping to visit Uncle Antonio again soon because of this discussion about Puerto Rico and the necessity for family. A number of other guest stars have returned thanks to Will Trent. I detested how the visitors, particularly Ramos, made Will feel like that unimportant child who had to vanish once more. He attempted to make Will believe that he would be insignificant and that he would never be able to touch him, which just made Will more eager to nail him. I appreciated that Will revealed he knew more about his heritage than he had previously believed because those are the haughty jerks that he hates. His passion for literature and folklore helped reconcile 2 lovers and put a guy behind bars for murder. Watching Angie and the Ormelwood mentor college interns was entertaining, but I couldn't find Franklin. Although I adore Angie and Ormelwood's collaboration, the episode synopsis hinted that Franklin was working with them and the interns on this code case. Franklin was where? Since the premiere of Will Trent Season 4, we haven't seen him much, and we would like to see more. But the hilarious thing about Angie and Ormelwood was that neither of them wanted to deal with the college interns or their discoveries on a cold case. Angie became even more engrossed when she discovered that Tony Hollis, the primary suspect and witness, was ignored because she had murdered her boyfriend. There is always more to the tale, so trust our Angie. Maya and the other interns believed they would discover simple solutions. They were waiting for a suspect to drop something they could run for DNA during a stakeout with Angie and Ormawood, and it was funny to see how antsy they were. It was fun to watch them pick up knowledge from the masters because they were so young and naive. Angie understood unstable and untrustworthy women, so when they failed, she wanted to interview Tony. I started giggling because it's so Angie, even though it definitely wasn't suitable. I detested the fact that the halfway house manager had complete control over Tony and killed Beverly when she attempted to defend her. Kaya attempted to act like a miniature version of Angie and face the culprit. Fortunately, she sent a message to her partner, or else she may have been destroyed. Will Trent fanatics, it's your turn. Were you pleased that the show went back to its origins? Was it enjoyable to watch Will dance once more? Should Angie and Ormawood mentor more interns? Until you pass away, keep dancing. While dancing the night away in a light-hearted competition with a rival pair, a victim passes away. Poisoned, but in what way? Faith is baffled by how this case came to be. The only things Will can agree on are the cause of death and how much his Spanish needs to be improved. This was supposed to be a light-hearted, enjoyable night out, but it swiftly and inexplicably turned into a murder. The victim did not consume the poison through food or drink, and they do not possess a weapon. Investigating and resolving the unthinkable is what Will and Faith do. The identity of the murderer will surprise you. With the assistance of 2 forensic symposium students, Angie and Ormawood employ stakeouts, record research, and tried-and-true actual detective work to identify their murder suspects. There was a lot of murder mystery and crime solving in tonight's show. Without a doubt, that was worth watching. A look back at his origins. Will revisits his family history and experiences a flashback to when he first started learning his mother tongue. Along with his uncle and Betty, he went back to Puerto Rico to see his mother's house and family. Today, in a dance club called Serendas, people are relaxing and dancing at an afterparty. They were taking pleasure in the electrifying dance environment that appeared to permeate the entire space. The dancing turns into a friendly but intense competition between 2 couples. One of the young women drops, dead, shocking everyone. When was dancing considered a deadly weapon? Come on, Faith and Will. By going on the ground with the dead woman and attempting to determine what might have killed her, Will does his special thing. Faith starts interviewing everyone in the club. She discovers Ramos Delgado, a Colombian cultural attaché, and his spouse, Isabella. The deceased Catalina's visa was sponsored by Ramos. Amanda is presented to them by Faith. Do they suspect foul play? Ramos asks. Faith doesn't know. She goes to get a quick update from Will and Pete. Will and Pete both concur that the victim was poisoned. They present the facts to her and explain them. It was not administered by injection and was a fast-acting toxin. Will protests to Faith's desire to send everyone home. Before they depart, he explains, they must speak with everyone. They don't have time to hire an interpreter, Faith informs him. Will takes up the challenge and puts his 2 years of Spanish instruction to the test. Someone who speaks English gives him harsh criticism. Will is a touch out of his element as Ramos and Isabella Delgado, the Bogotá power couple, chat beautifully in Spanish. When Isabella discovers, she discreetly requests that her husband communicate with them in English. Ramos was describing Catalina's amazing dancing skills and how some people were envious of them. She was outstanding. Javi, Catalina's dancing partner, is shocked by her passing. Faith asks him to share all of his memories with them.